TYT. I am joined by almost a completely different panel, but I'm super excited about it. Francis Maxwell, Ben Mankiewicz, and Ada Rodriguez. Thank you for joining us. Ida, sorry. I'm like, is it Ada? Ida? You are a comedian, writer, producer, an all-around badass. Thank you for joining us today.
I'm a reflection of you.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you. That's super nice.
And you're a reflection of me.
No, I'm not. I've been to Ireland.
I despise you.
I'm really happy that you guys are on the panel today because there are a few Olympic-related stories that I think that all of you would do a better job at commenting on than I would. So we'll get to that in just a minute, but I do want to read some tweets regarding the first hour. Your mama says, the people that claim to love the Constitution are more than happy to throw it out for those they fear or hate, which is so true, right? When it comes to, you know, our Fourth Amendment rights, when it comes to our First Amendment rights, if it impacts someone that we dislike negatively, we'll be willing to give away those constitutional rights. But when it comes to the Second Amendment, it doesn't matter. You know, we'll even grant, you know, suspected terrorists the Second Amendment. It's amazing. Also, Baked Slice Mahoney says, if Trump wins, I'm going to become a creationist because it will be a sign that we are not further evolved than the apes. I really like that tweet. All right, let's get started with some of the stories. All right. Simone Manuel won an incredible swimming competition, the 100-meter freestyle. And the reason why this story is so relevant is not because of the fact that she won it, it's because of the fact that she is the first African-American woman to win it. Now, unfortunately, as you guys know, there have been a number of publications that write about the Olympics in a way that some deem offensive. And it's particularly noticeable in the headlines. So Mercury News is a prime example of this. They were writing about Simone's win, and the headline that they tweeted was the following. Olympics, Michael Phelps shares historic night with African American. Wow. Okay. So people were upset about this, and we'll get to, you know, the angry tweets in just a second. But I just want to make a point about how not only historic this is, how it's something that breaks, you know, these myths and these stereotypes about black people in general, right? So in the United States, what people don't really realize, there's this stereotype that black people can't swim, right? And you hear it perpetuated, and it drives me absolutely crazy when they don't even really know about the context of what black people have had to deal with in terms of swimming in the United States. Even after the Supreme Court ruled on Brown versus the Board of Education, which essentially desegregated our schools, pools in the U.S. were still segregated, right? And so the idea behind that was, well, you know, the pool situation is a little more sensitive than schools. So black people didn't have the same access to pools that white people did.
Didn't have the same access to the ocean.
Yeah.
That's
beaches.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. And so fast forward to today, you know, Simone winning, you know, this competition is so symbolic, so historical, and to write about it in the way that Mercury News wrote about it is insensitive to say the least.
Yeah. I feel like in the Olympics so far, right, because it doesn't happen that often, like people have just been so naive in the way they've been covering a lot of the topics in this competition. The fact is, like, this is the case study for the worst idea of journalism I've seen, because not only is it racist in a way, it's sexist as well. Like, they don't put her name in it, but they put Michael Phelps' name in it, right? And I understand Michael Phelps is the most decorated Olympian of all time. We have non-stop talked about Michael Phelps on TYT Sports. But when you have a record-breaking achievement, that should be the forefront of your news, and that should be the way to draw in and try not to, in a way, kind of minimalize and belittle the achievement by putting it next to Michael Phelps, and then putting in the fact to try and draw people in is because he's next to an African American. It's just like the journalistic integrity of a lot of sports writers throughout this competition. I'm baffled by it. Like the Chicago Bears, I think it was a lineman or something like that, I don't know. But his wife won a medal, and the headlines everywhere was like, Chicago Bears lineman.
The lineman's wife wins
the competition, right? And it's just, it belittles these athletes because we're so naive to the Olympics, and because we might not think It's the most important sport at times. We often just want to belittle it and just cover it as if it's just passing our page. All right, we'll just write this quick headline and then we'll get the Olympics out of the way.
It minimizes their accomplishment.
Yeah.
And just put yourself in their shoes, right? You train and you win. All that hard work pays off, and you get minimized to nothing more than a skin color or a nationality or a race.
You know, I just think I love when people are so astonished when they see racism and sexism, but because people of color were used to it. Like we're like, it wasn't Donald Trump's African American. They didn't stipulate which African American it was. But just a few days ago, David Chiarelli with the Italians said black people didn't swim.
Yes.
They don't have buoyancy. So that's what he said, because the black girl was like, the Italian girl who lost because she lost and she didn't train like she was supposed to train, where her little Oompa Loompa looking ass said, we should paint ourselves black and maybe we can win. And you know, and that's the kind of stuff that people think they laugh and they celebrate or they retweet and they address, but those things are hurtful to people. Those are very hurtful. This is the we don't want to be politically correct thing. She was like, I'm sorry, I make mistakes. That's not making a mistake. That's making a racist comment.
Right. That I agree completely. This was probably a mistake in their defense. I mean, this was only showed up on the website. But there are a couple things that work to what Francis said. Michael Phelps is the guy that you instinctively might include in a headline. It's Michael Phelps. He's always the biggest story in the Olympics. So you give him give him that and weed, right? Man, imagine how successful this guy could be if he didn't smoke weed. If only he didn't smoke weed.
Ruined his life.
Ruined his life, totally. I stole that from somebody on Twitter. I don't remember who. So I get wanting to include Phelps in the headline. To their credit, they changed it pretty quickly. It didn't show up. This is the San Jose Mercury News, and that's really important that you know it's the San Jose Mercury News, because then working against them, they took it down, they apologized, they fixed the headline. So it's just some inexperienced person, probably overwhelmed, cranking out Olympic headlines, right? Oh, Michael Phelps. Oh, I got to include the black girl, right? Yeah. You know, he's probably patting himself on the back that he didn't say something hideous like, you know, Michael Phelps, black chick, win. You know, battle. He's like, look, I said African American, I win. No, but why you should then. What works against the San Jose Mercury News is that it's the San Jose Mercury News. That's Northern California. That's Stanford. Yeah. That's where she's from. Yeah. So I mean, in a sense, that goes back the other way, that Simone Manuel should be first.
Yes.
You know, Stanford athlete, first Black American, first African American to medal in swimming. Like, that's a headline. That's also Michael Phelps wins again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, the argument, because Cenk and I had a long discussion on the show about how these headlines are written. And oftentimes, if there's a female competitor, she's not named in the headline. Her famous husband or athletic husband is named in the headline instead, which, of course, takes away from the achievement. It minimizes her achievement, and it sucks. Like, anyone would be angry if they were placed in a situation like that. But Cenk's argument was, well, it's because these males are well known and the headlines are written in such a way that it'll get more attention. It'll lead to more viewership or readership. But in the case of this local paper, I mean, wouldn't you argue that a local individual who trained at a local school or went to a local school would get just as much readers?
No question. No question.
And they could have just included her name.
Just include her name,
They could still keep Michael Phelps.
Totally.
Just like with there's a headline that could have been written, whatever that Bears lineman's wife's name was, who of course I don't know either, but I don't know the Bears lineman either.
Corey Cudell.
But you could have said, you know, Anna Kasparian, wife of Bears lineman Christian Lopez. Yeah. You know, like, you can get them both in.
Yeah, the only form of.
Can you imagine if I did something on the show that got attention and people wrote the headline like, wife of former baseball player Christian Lopez? I would fucking lose my mind.
The only form of,
I may only refer to you to that as that going forward.
The only devil's advocate I will play in that situation was the Chicago Tribune that posted that, and he plays with the Bears, so they were trying to make some sort of Bears Chicago connection, right? So that I'll understand, but. If you watch the TYT Sports clips, I'm ripping apart left, right, and centre the coverage of it, because I'm sure JR will agree as well. Like, just the overall naivety of our coverage is so focused in, because it's not mainstream sports, because it's not American football, or it's not basketball or baseball, and we almost will disregard the effort that these Olympians have been putting in so that they can get their moment in the spotlight. Like, you can't take 10 minutes away to really do some more research and figure out the names and what their particular sports are so that you can take a break from LeBron James' statistics off season when he's eating breakfast. Like, who cares at the moment in time?
sexism is
I think he had 2 eggs, bacon. I'm not sure exactly what he had.
hilarious. No, and the sexism is disgusting with the Olympic coverage. That will you twirl around for us one time? Like the things that they say to the women is just, it is. Come on, man. Like we're.
Did they ask
it's
them? I missed that.
2016. Yeah, there's a whole there's a montage video of all the sexist things that have happened, and one reporter tells the woman, "Will you twirl around for us?"
I remember that was the last time we covered the Olympics,
Yes.
and I remember.
right.
I don't know if this occurred during the Olympics. I apologize if my memory is not accurate here. But there was a volleyball player who had a breast reduction surgery, and that was it. That was the only thing that reporters wanted to talk to her about, her breast reduction surgery. Didn't matter how she performed, didn't matter how athletic she was. It's incredible. So, yeah, look, there are certain things that women get more attention for, and it's frustrating because that, again, minimizes their achievements and their accomplishments, especially when they're succeeding and they're winning these medals.
And to what
Ida,
I had it. God,
you got it.
we just met right before the show. In my defense. So what Ida said is I think needs to be emphasized because there's no historical context here. Right? I mean, not just swimming pools, as you brought up, Anna, and not just the beach access, but in 1987, which was the 40th anniversary of Jackie Robinson breaking the color line in baseball, famously, the general manager of the Los Angeles Dodgers, which was the organization that signed Jackie Robinson and had been sort of the best at black athletes on the field and an overwhelmingly Latino fan base, significant Latino fan base. And he goes on Nightline and very famously talked about why there wouldn't be a black manager is because they don't have the intellectual capacity to manage the game. And then, as dumb as that was, it got dumber because he said it's like swimming; they have no buoyancy. Like this is the GM of the Dodgers, and a guy who had signed black players and signed them because he thought it was important that we went out and brought Latino and black and brown players into the majors, and just no one had told him. No, man, your skin color doesn't affect whether you can swim. Weirdly, pigmentation doesn't affect ability to stay up in water.
Not to mention that we've been swimming here for a very long time.
That's right.
Latino, black and brown alike. Those Cubans that came from that fell off the boat during the Mario boat lift. They had to swim part of the way, and there was a nice little boat ride that came from Africa when some people had to do some swimming on there too. So I think it's so interesting but yeah, it's all about historical.
But making Simone Manuel's triumph in the pool again a moment of particular celebration in America.
That's a small thing. I'm sorry, this is way too long on this. But this is the one part about it. When someone says, "Oh, it's a racist thing to do," when you ignore her and then put up Michael Phelps, who, by the way, at least in that particular picture we had, he wasn't in the image. Who's Michael Phelps? Where is he? Who cares? Put his name out there. If your thought is for click purposes, let's get more people reading it. Yeah, whatever. But that shows sometimes when you're racist and sometimes when you overlook people, it's not just because you're going, oh, I hate those N-words. But what happens is you overlook their existence. They don't matter. And they don't matter so much, you didn't realize that they don't matter. So it's not always just this anger. It's just you missed it because you don't even care about
it. You don't see it.
Yeah, you don't see them. Someone say, I don't see color. That's a problem.
Right.
Yeah.
You should start seeing it and understand and recognize it and understand what she did and the greatness that she has.
Yeah.
They don't like to do it.
All right. Let's talk about some drug use within the Olympics.
Nice.
All right.
Is this a Michael Phelps story?
Michael Phelps is involved. Yes. All right. Russian swimmer Yulia Efimova was asked a question that really struck a nerve. Now, if you guys can remember, she had to face a 16-month suspension after she tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs. Now, of course, that suspension is now over, and she's competing. And during a tumultuous press conference, she was asked about, whether or not she should have been banned for life because of her drug use. Okay, so during a contentious press conference after she won the silver medal in the 200-meter breaststroke, she answered the question by saying, "What would she say about Michael Phelps?" She continues, "Of course, I'm not for doping, but I've never used it on purpose. But I know there have been very many occasions where people do it because they don't know or because they're stupid or naive. Of course, she also says, let's go to graphic 9B. There always should be another chance. When you are driving a car and break a rule, you get only a ticket. You don't lose your license for life or get put in jail." So she was, basically talking about Michael Phelps and his that picture that went viral of him taking a bong rip. Kind of made me like him more. And then, you know, he also got a DUI, which don't drink and drive, obviously. And so she's like, what's up? How come he's not facing any criticism and I am? Why am I still dealing with this? Now, of course, you can make the case that on one hand, you have someone who is taking performance-enhancing drugs, and on another hand, you had someone who is taking unenhancing drugs. Exactly. But nonetheless, it's an interesting, you know, comparison. What do you guys think?
I think that she's wrong on every level, and I say it with a degree of, I don't get this Michael Phelps thing, but I mean, I get it. He's great, but you know, like enough.
He's won like 22 medals.
He's won like 22 medals. First of all, one quick thing I love most about swimming, and I love all the swimming things, is when they talk about the team. I mean, it's not a team, man. You're just swimming. Like, there's nobody else on the team. It's just you. But like, no, the difference between taking weed or drunk driving has nothing to do with competition. The performance-enhancing drugs are the sanctity of the competition and the fairness of the competition. So it's different. That said, so here's how you deal with questions about a lifetime ban. You say, I got punished, and now I'm back. That's it. And you get to come back. She got punished. She gets to come back.
Okay, probably going to piss off a lot of people, but I'm from Scotland. I don't care. So, because I'm not part of the UK.
Man. People from Scotland don't give a shit.
You said Scotland.
You're right. So I'm going to step off the star-spangled pedestal for a moment, right? Which I think a lot of people need to for a second. So her response is asinine. It's ridiculous. Weed and alcohol is not going to enhance your performance. But the substances that she has been found guilty for, so I'm going to kind of take you through her history really quick, right?
Yeah, tell me.
So the first situation, which, and she lived in Los Angeles, by the way, for a while, and that's where she's training. So I think she went into a GNC, picked up a substance that she didn't really know. She didn't speak very good English at that time, didn't really know what it was. And that could all just be an excuse, by the way. I don't know the actual facts, but this is what her trainer and everything said. And then she was found guilty for that, having a trace of performance-enhancing drugs, and she was banned. The ingesting of a substance that you don't expect to be a performance-enhancing drug is very similar to Jessica Hardy, who, as we know, US swimmer, who in 2008 was banned. Then she came back, went to the London Olympics, medaled twice. No one was splashing water on her face. No one was booing her around the stands. No one was treating her as some sort of convict that had just been allowed to just come in and participate. The way that this swimmer's been treated, I think, is unsportsmanlike. In and around the pole, she's getting splashed water, she's getting booed. People aren't looking on the eye, right? There's over 200 other athletes that were allowed to participate in the Olympics because the drug that she had taken for the second time, which again, she might have taken knowing farewell that it actually has the ability to enhance your endurance and has the ability to help you in many different ways. The drug is meldonium. Yeah, the drug, that was the first drug. The second time is meldonium, and that's one that Sharapova, the tennis player at the moment, is banned as well for that. So because it was only implied in January of this year, there's cloudiness on how long it takes to get out of your system. So they basically just allowed for many athletes to participate in the Olympics because they didn't know if the system was in their drugs before, it was in their system before it, or it was after the situation. So there is still some cloudiness, but that could all just be made up to prevent the fact that she has actually taken drugs in the past. So I'm not making an excuse for her response. Her response is ridiculous. She shouldn't be bringing Michael Phelps, the most decorated Olympian, again, into that conversation. But her treatment outside of it, I think, has a lot more to do with where she's from.
You think this is Trump's fault? Absolutely, because he rolls with Putin, and that's his bitch. Yes, I get it. I see where you're going with it.
See what I'm saying? So, but in the Jessica Hardy,
to a story we didn't get to do today. I love it.
But again, I know it's going to get a lot of hate from the patriotic fans of the United
I'm with
States.
You. And that term you said, that star-spangled pedestal, I completely understand what you say when you're saying that, because American athletes in the Olympics are revered to a degree that is, enviable for all other athletes. I do, but she needs to get a better PR person. The whole excuse about if you drive a car, what you do behind the car. If you hit somebody, you can go to jail. If you crash another car, it's not that cut and dry. And if you go to GNC and you take something, you are an Olympian.
Yes.
You have to be very particular and specific about what you put in your body,
I didn't even know you could get performance-enhancing drugs
Well,
at
you
GNC.
don't. It's some parts of it that
I get
could
every person who's been tested positive for
Yeah,
performance-enhancing drugs
it.
in the history of the world. bought it accidentally at GNC.
No, and I'm not saying I'm not making
GNC
I'm not
is still
making
around.
excuses for her. That's the thing. I'm not making
Nobody
excuses for
shot
her.
it into their arm.
Very
they
true.
all bought
But
it at GNC.
what I'm saying is Jessica Hardy in the 2012 Olympics, and she said that she ingested it without knowing. That was the same excuse. It's just written in paper. Oh, I got found guilty for PADs. All right, no, I had no idea. No idea what was going on. But then because she participated in 2012 and she had time to kind of clear her name, no one treated her any differently.
But
and I
we'll
think
just
that that's
accept
all
the
I'm
fact
saying.
that everyone dopes and then just allow it.
Let it go.
But they
Let's
don't.
just.
Yeah.
I remember Haas had made that point on the show, and I thought it was crazy, right? And I was like, this is such a dumb point. Like, what are you talking about? But no, at this point, I'm tired of having conversations about who's doping. Should they dope? When did they dope? Did they dope before? Did they know when they doped? Like, how about they all dope? And let's just move on with our lives.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, it's true, but I mean, that's true that many people think that, except they don't all dope. I mean, and so.
But many of them, I was married to a professional athlete as well. Many of them do.
Yes.
There are levels of doping, you know, clenbuterol versus, you know, something at GNC. I want to know who's splashing water in her face. Is
Yeah,
the
it's
same
rude.
people who gave her
it's
the,
in the same
drugs
person
at
that King,
GNC?
the swimmer who wasn't looking at her, the King that wasn't looking at her in the press conference, and it was just kind
Lily
of just
King, yeah.
vindicated that
Oh,
she
yeah,
was.
yeah.
Lily
this-
King thought she should have been banned for life. And so the same standard should obviously apply to her. But there are villains and heroes, and the villains and heroes sometimes it's all mythology, and
long as they're
sometimes
not
it's
American.
earned. I got it, but sometimes the villains are Americans, and certainly the rest of the world, sometimes the villains are Americans, and that's okay. But the Eastern European countries, there's a rich history of cheating, which especially before the fall of the wall. So, I mean, you know, there's no question that the East German women were cheating for years and years and years.
When you look at the list.
So the level of skepticism for Russian athletes, especially Russian athletes under Putin, is probably higher. One great thing, and I just wanted to read what she said, because I love what she said, because it makes me like her, and since we've so I wanted to end at least where we think that maybe Yulia Efimova is human. Sport has helped me tremendously to stay calm. Maybe on the surface I appear calm, but inside everything is just boiling. I learned to control myself, but when I was a kid I would just burst into tears. Now I just stay calm. What are you going to do? So, yeah, that makes me think maybe you're one of the 3 people who did buy it at GNC.
I don't know. I feel like that sounds really unhealthy. She should really express herself.
Oh, you mean just like let it out?
Yeah, like, because I feel that boiling sensation all the time, and I got to let it out somehow.
I think you do.
I do. I do. All right, guys, let's take our first break. When we come back, non-Olympics related stories, including a lesbian couple suing New Jersey for their fertility laws. Really interesting discrimination case. Stick around.
So Jodie Foster's directing a movie that's coming out, Money Monster. George Clooney's in it, Julia Roberts is in it, Yank Huger's in it. What is this?
You're not really in it. You're not actually playing a role in it. You're just kind of like dicking around, aren't you?
What is this?
Oh.
This is not bullshit. This is not like the last Jodie Foster movie I was in.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Right, where
Like
I'm
you're in
sitting
the background, like.
I gotta tell you this, is on shoptyt.com, there's a shirt that's relevant to the story where I'm in the background in Contact with Matthew McConaughey's in the foreground, and then it says Thug Life.
Really?
Yes!
I haven't seen that shirt. That's fucking awesome.
No, I'm one of the news guys that's amazed by what's happening. You know, you see that in the movies all the time, but normally they'd go to the CNN or MSNBC host.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they'll do that in the movie as well, but they're gonna come to TYT. Okay.
That's cool. So
No, that's not cool. That's super cool. We're gonna get drunk and go to that movie. Bart over there he became like Buds immediately. Of course. And as she's leaving, she's, all right, I'll see you later, Jodie.
Really?
Yeah, I'm like, oh, okay. Are you Bart? Are you gonna see her later?
guys, welcome back to TYT. Francis, Ben, and Ida with you. All right, so I want to read a few TYT lives. Chris Allen says of Simone Manuel, she's a history maker, and no one can take that away from her.
Yes.
Okay. Henry the engineer says, if it's an honest mistake referring to the headline in that story, then the problem relates to news organizations looking to make clickbait over good articles.
Yeah.
All right, Dansmon Arbre says, nothing Phelps has done athletically is as important as what Simone Manuel accomplished socially last night. All right.
Well, I mean, they're both important, you know, and they don't need to be in competition.
Distinguished.
Yeah. Well, and I think the responsibility of there's always a social responsibility with people of color when they make an accomplishment that they can't just enjoy the moment, savor the moment as an athlete. It's like, you know, everybody has to meet this Muhammad Ali bar where Muhammad Ali, you know, volunteered for that. That was his calling. Everybody doesn't want to be a social activist. Maybe she just wants to swim.
But
Yeah,
I had
that's a good
sympathy
point.
for to some extent, well, no, to an enormous extent for O.J. Simpson in that documentary, young O.J. Simpson in that documentary because who doesn't have sympathy for O.J. Simpson? No, because you know, in that moment when led by Muhammad Ali and then Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Bill Russell and I'm leaving one guy out, Jim Brown. You know, that these guys take these important stands, and OJ was like, I just want to play football. And I'm like, yeah, you don't, just because you're in this situation, you're not, no one's asking Paul Hornig, great white players, to take a stand. Like, if he wants to just play football, then he should be allowed to just play football.
And when the white ones take a stand, nobody even takes notice. Like the white guy who was at the Olympics, when the black dudes did that, they didn't care about him until after he died. I just think there's such a great penalty for people of color when they have success. And I heard that on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. But it's true. It was a whole story. Like there's so much that you can't. You got to be really careful because there's always somebody lurking and waiting to hold you accountable for something. And I do think the headline was wrong, whether she wants to be an activist or not. But I do think that she should just be an athlete that was enjoying the fruits of her labor.
Yeah.
You know, and that's enough. That's enough. You don't have to be a black person and carry the weight of the world on your shoulders all the time. She is enough just being great at what she did.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like a lot of people expect things from, you know, public figures in general, right? But especially those who are minorities. But oftentimes, as they're holding these individuals at such a high standard, like, I question what they're doing for movements that they feel so passionately about.
So, yeah, a lot of the time it happens in the entertainment industry as well, and a much lower case when you see someone like, I don't know why this example is popping in my head, but like Zayn Malik of One Direction, when people were calling him out to ask him to speak out on things that matter when it came to either going with the Black Lives Matter movement or anything else. And they're calling out for someone that like him to use his platform to speak out on something. And then what that does is it poses a question to him to make him feel like, oh, I need to speak out on this. I feel obliged to do it. And then what he does is either it'll go one way or the other, and either way it'll be taken all out of context.
Yes.
And before you know it, that there is news itself. Not what's actually going on, not the movement, not the crucial pieces of information that should be taken and should be acknowledged and should be understood. Instead, they're calling out for people in positions of power with a platform to almost choose a side whenever they've got their moment of fame. Like, I was going to ask, do you think that this athlete will face backlash if she didn't use her platform in a way to kind of stand for something, stand for a message, stand for something and put a message forward? Or would she be allowed to just take a moment and appreciate what's she's accomplished, basically?
She's already standing up for something. She's being an exceptional young woman who did something great, not just athletically, but academically. And that is what people who don't want to be activists do to move the movement forward. Yeah. You know, I mean, and I do split sometimes when it comes to people of color and things with Black Lives Matter. I think those people that exploit black people and experience privilege as a result of black people being their supporters and their constituents, and then you ignore them when something bad happens to them and you don't use your voice. You know, I got a lot of backlash for what I said about Zoe Saldana when it came to the Nina Simone thing. People were like, you're Latina, you're a traitor. She should be able to play play whoever she wants. And I said, listen, Zoe Saldana became famous because of Drumline and Guess Who. Those are Black movies. You don't let your privilege allow you to forget the people who put you where you are. And I think that when it comes to people of color, like, don't exploit them and then ignore them. Now, that's one thing. But for her, I think she's doing everything that she's supposed to be doing. She's being exceptional. And Black, white, Italian, Armenian, it doesn't matter. Being exceptional is being exceptional, right? And I do. Now, Les Zane wear his tight jeans. He has no business talking about. We don't want to hear him talking about issues. He's not even.
Too tight. I like my jeans tight, but
I know, his are too tight. He's cute, too. He's real cute.
I don't know who that is. Okay.
All right, let's move on to some other news. 2 lesbian couples are suing the state of New Jersey over the way they have worded their laws that pertain to insurance companies paying for fertility treatments. Now, these lesbian couples are attempting to conceive, but apparently because of the way these laws are written, insurance companies would not pay for some of the treatments that they've gotten in order to conceive children. According to the suit, the women were denied insurance coverage for their fertility treatments because of the wording of the New Jersey law that requires women to prove their infertility not only through medical diagnosis, through unprotected heterosexual sex. The law, the 4 women argue in the suit, discriminates against infertile gay couples trying to conceive.
What kind of a law
Isn't that
includes
amazing?
that phrasing?
First of all, like, how do you even include that in the law? But how do you enforce something like that? Like, do you need to have the insurance providers sit there and watch you have sex?
Right, unprotected.
Unprotected.
Yeah,
no,
right.
are you raw dogging it or not? Okay. I mean, it's crazy. All right, so state law requires large insurance providers to cover costly fertility treatments for patients medically unable to have children. The couples take issue with how the law defines infertility, which includes the inability to become pregnant after 1 or 2 years of unprotected sex, depending on the woman's age. So not only does the insurance provider have to sit there and watch, it needs to take place for at least 2 years before the insurance provider pays for the fertility treatment.
God. I want to know how this conversation goes on. Like, did this insurance provider so have you tried like unprotected heterosexual sex? I mean, I know it's not your thing, but it's going to get you covered if you go forth and do it. It's insane to me. Like how, as Ben said, how it's actually written. But again, there's a lot of laws in this country that's written that I don't understand. But how it's enforced?
Well, I mean, it's written, I suppose, obviously written to protect insurance companies.
Yes.
Insurance companies got it in there because they don't want people just going and getting fertility treatments when they haven't tried the traditional manner of getting pregnant. Right? If somebody jumping to that, they don't want to have to pay benefits.
It's like the first time in America where you're encouraged to have sex.
That's right. So
you're kind of forced to have sex.
Now, we don't have a legislative history on this law. And in fact, New Jersey is one of 15 states that requires insurance companies, big insurance companies, to cover fertility treatments. That's good. That suggests it's New Jersey. There's a degree of progressiveness there in Jersey. So my hunch is that it's more likely to have been done with the intent of protecting insurance companies from people just going to them without even trying.
Yes.
And not an effort to hurt gay couples.
So let me clarify a few things. You're right that we don't have, the legislative history of this particular law, but one thing that I do know for sure is that this was a law that was written prior to, some of the gay tolerance that we've experienced over the last 5 years. So this was not written with the intention of discriminating against gay couples. I know that for a fact. However, they haven't updated the wording of this of this law, and so as a result, because of the way it's written, it's impacting lesbian couples who have no interest in having heterosexual sex, right? Now, interestingly enough, you mentioned that 15 states, and it's kind of disgusting that only 15 states have the insurance providers pay for these treatments, but of those 15 states, 2 of them have updated the law to make sure it has the right wording so it doesn't discriminate against lesbians. And those 2 states are California and Maryland. So I don't think that there was any malice with New Jersey, and I think it's important. Intentions are important. I just think that it's time for them to update their law and ensure that, these couples get treated the same way that other couples get treated.
Or these laws were written by a bunch of dudes who get off on sex with lesbians.
Maybe. That could be a possibility.
Because it sounds a little... there are enumerated laws. They're all over. I'm from Florida, where it's against